Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to the Truth is Barrel Proof. I'm Jack, also known as the Hood Sommelier, and I'm your host. Today is interesting again because I don't know. I have too many friends in the industry. That's why I tell myself is I think I have too many friends because I almost cannot uh, invite someone to the show without them being my friend. And this one is pretty particular because he actually is my friend outside of whiskey. Zach has a long resume from working behind the bar, working in the kitchen, and as of a year and a half, almost 2 years ago, he was the one behind a lot of articles that you've read, a lot of uh, uh, what do you call that word again? You see my immigrant threat is kicking in. Those little snippet that or video that you see that elevate and talk about whiskey. But what brought me closer to get to know who Zach was when reading his work, the way he described whiskey and the way he described spirits as a whole, and what he's done by bringing worldview of culinary uh, perspective into the whiskey industry. I've sat down and listened to a lot of his interviews. I read a lot of his articles. But this time, he's not here as a writer at all. He's here to talk to us uh, from his hometown himself, or home state, Kentucky, a little bit about a new brand, kind of new on the market. I felt this brand came out that was a little hidden about 4 years ago, almost 5 years ago, and I didn't think a lot of people talked about it enough. So I am here. So Zach, that is representing this brand when it comes to their international sales, kind of a I hate the term brand ambassador, kind of the brand ambassador is doing to bring awareness for us to know a little more about this brand. So without further ado, I'll bring Zach in for him to tell himself who he is. Without further ado, Mr. Zach Johnston. How are you doing, my friend?
Very good to see you, Jack. It's been too long.
Way too long, way too long.
Yeah,
This industry just engulf us. So,
yeah,
everybody live in their corner. I feel like this, I started doing more interviews and people are like, oh, you stopped doing interviews worldwide. I'm like, yeah, I had a high schooler. I now she's in college. So now I can do
right,
what I want.
right. You got a little more time on your hands.
Yes, yeah, just a little bit more than the average person. So thank you so much for coming on.
My
I've
pleasure.
been so excited to talk to you and talk about this brand. And you know how long we haven't talked because you sent me the samples. This is beginning of the year, and we're like, we got to do this. We are definitely going to do this, and then we are not doing it. But I'm like, you know what? We are doing this now. So thank you for
Oh,
being here. For the people that don't know you or can't recognize the face because you always have the shades on your pictures, right? Can't recognize the face. Who is Zach Johnston, and what's your resume, and what do you do in this industry now?
so I sort of grew up in hospitality service industry a bit. Got myself through college by working in a sandwich shop and a Neapolitan pizzeria and things like that. Um, Fell in love with whiskey properly, probably on a trip to Ireland about 25 years ago. Remember, I brought back an 18-year-old bottle of Jameson. That was in 2000. And sadly, it got smashed in my bag and soaked the whole bag. But was undeterred. About 4 years later, I went to Edinburgh for the first time and got introduced to, whiskeys like Talisker. Um, Worked in wine bars in Prague and different things like that. Um, and then I worked in documentary film for quite a while. About 10 years ago, I guess now, I started working at a very high end cocktail bar in Berlin called Victoria Bar, famously owned by Stefan Weber and Beate Hindemann, and they wrote the book The Art of Sophisticated Drinking. I was very lucky in that they took me under their wing and really sort of expanded my love of cocktail culture, spirits, but also pairing with food. We once a month we do a special night where we close the bar, bring in about 40 people, and we do like no joke, a 6-course pairing menu with 6 cocktails and 6 different plates,
Wow.
and then talk about, the history of the spirit or the drink or the cocktail and how it pairs with certain food and et cetera, which was, as someone who's always been sort of a food traveler, all over the world, was right up my alley, and so I felt like I'd kind of found my niche, if you will.
Hmm.
Um, that being said, the bar life is a rough life, like, especially if you're in a city like Berlin or, Brooklyn, or where nobody really sleeps, and so, you get to work at 7 p.m. and you're maybe walking out the door at 5, 6 a.m., and then you gotta turn around and do it again, and, I had young kids at the time, so I looked for other ways to enjoy food and travel and spirits and drinks and cocktails without having to live that lifestyle, and I ended up in media, working for a publication in the US called Uprocks. They were founded by Jarrett Meyer, who founded Ruckus Records and sort of had shifted from music towards publishing. I got very lucky in that I got pulled from the comments section for sort of editing posts that they were posting by the travel and food editor. And it turns out Steve Ramucci, he offered me a job, and we're, from the Pacific Northwest, same age, very similar ethos, and we sort of became very close best friends for years after that, as he mentored me and Jarrett mentored me, and I was able to spend the next 5 or so years building a reputation in the food, drink, and travel sphere as a writer. Um, then around 2019-ish, I started focusing in on whiskey more thoroughly because I was, like I said, a passion since 2000 when I first took that trip to Ireland. Um, then obviously 2020 happened, 2021, that sort of took off, as in people were looking for a lot of whiskey content. I ended up being a judge in San Francisco, also IWSC, things like that, which was a natural progression for me. And then, God, it's been over almost a year and a half now. I I decided to leave media behind. I sort of felt like I had come to the end of the road there, not in any way where you know my job was in jeopardy or anything. It was a natural time for me to move on. Um, and so I took a job in the industry. I'd moved to Kentucky in 22, and I had sort of moved here with the idea to be closer to the whiskey industry, right?
Hmm.
Uh, I'd been in Berlin for 14 years, and it was getting more difficult to get samples and things like that. And so, and just to be near, people I had, developed relationships with over all those years as well, was more advantageous. And then, 2024, I took the leap and started working for a great little, basically startup whiskey brand called Blackwood Distilling Co. Uh,
Hmm.
and that was started by Guinness McFadden, who's the co-founder. He had won the Kentucky Derby in 2019 with Country House, 65 to 1 odds, biggest long shot in Kentucky Derby history. Also, that was the year famously that there was a foul and the first place winner was actually disqualified. So a very historical win. And Blackwood Stables became Blackwood Distilling in 2020. 2021, they put out their first whiskey, which was a toasted finish bourbon and a toasted finish rye with
Hmm.
a. And what always intrigued me was the quality of the whiskey, right? Like at that point by 2021, when they first brought me over to their warehouse, Justin Thomas of Justin's House of Bourbon brought me over, and Justin Sloan. We were friends before that already, and their whiskey was just fantastic. Like they are connoisseurs, but also they know what they're doing. They spent years running Justin's House of Bourbon,
Correct. Correct.
making vintage whiskeys, and they knew how to put a whiskey together, right?
Correct. Correct.
So it wasn't a surprise, but it was also a pleasant surprise in that it was actually lived up to what you would expect from people who love whiskey so much. And that was sort of it as well. I met Guinness on that trip, and ended up moving to Kentucky and had kept in contact with them for the next literally 3 years as they put out more releases. And then sort of Guinness called me up one day and was like, "Hey, you know, not quite sure exactly what you want to do, but if we were going to start expanding the brand outside of Kentucky, and hopefully internationally. And it felt like we had developed a rapport enough, and I was like, it felt like the right time. You know how it is, Jack. Like
Yeah, yeah,
sometimes it's just like it just feels right, right?
correct.
And you can't justify it or intellectualize it. It just felt like the right thing to do.
Correct.
And here it is, like again, a year and a half later, and we're in 7 states. Um, we're about to launch in the EU. We just got into Australia. We're looking at South Korea, Japan, Singapore, and Hong Kong next year. We've
That is huge.
Yeah, we got 2 big collaborations coming out, one this fall, one next spring. We got we expanded from just having the barrel strengths to having the new toasted 105 versions of our toasted product. And, we're plugging away at building a distillery out in, Madison County, so it's been a big sort of push. Because we're officially the American whiskey sponsor of, North America's 50 Best Restaurants, with the world's 50 Best team.
Oh yeah, word 50, word best. Yeah,
Yeah, so, we're, working with them as well, and sort of, it's interesting because at the end of the day, good whiskey is, one part of the equation, right?
correct, correct.
And
It's whiskey expand itself onto so many places. I feel like a lot of brand kind of miss that part. Most people brand comes on and all they want to do is how much are we selling, how good our whiskey is. The conversation never about, what whiskey or your brand represent as a whole, outside from hospitality to community engagement to,
yes,
a
yes.
board market. So I feel like some people miss the boat when they bring out their brands because they make it all about, I think the furthest they go out is the bar and then cigar, and
Right.
everything else is kind of forgotten. So just listen to you talk about that expansion, working on a distillery, which we'll get deeper into to understand exactly how the brand is trying to expand. I'm going to assume you call name from Guinness to Justin to all those people are like the godfathers in Kentucky of what whiskey, what you cannot, I tell people you cannot go to Kentucky to start a whiskey business without stopping to see Justin Sloan or or his brother the Justin to actually say, hey, let me get your blessing or at least show me the way so I can actually. I think we all been there. I think the first place I've ever bought whiskey from was Justin House of Bourbon before even I visited Kentucky myself. So these people know their whiskey. Now I was one of the lucky people when this came out in 2021 that actually tasted the first expression. And immediately I was like, yeah, I mean, duh.
Yeah,
It was more like
yeah,
duh. Yeah, this was meant to be good. But for the people that do not know at least what the brand looks like,
yeah.
that's the cover page of that of our thing. But I'm gonna display it quickly so you can see.
And
Uh
I'll walk you through real quick as well,
correct, correct.
because
So
this is the fun part of, selling whiskey when you're at whiskey festivals and you're at events and you say this same thing about 50,000 times a year, so it's almost like muscle memory. But,
absolutely.
what's sort of beautiful about Blackwood is our process. So with, a lot of finished whiskeys, what happens is people will bring in their barrels, they'll create a batch of however much volume they want, and then they'll bring in whatever finishing barrel they have, and they 53 gallons, 90 gallons, depending on the barrel, of course, fill those barrels up to maximize the volume and maximize the fact that they paid a lot of money for those barrels, and then they'll have them rest for anywhere from a couple weeks to years, right? We're not doing that. So what makes Blackwood unique is our one-to-one rebarreling process. So we're bringing in 8-year-old Kentucky bourbon, 7-year-old Indiana rye, and we're rebarreling it one-to-one, keeping every single barrel a single barrel that's in our warehouse. uh,
Okay.
that means though, and we're rebarreling into new toasted barrels from Kelvin Cooperage, and they give us a trio of barrels they make specifically for us. It's a medium toast, no char, a char 4, and a char 2 with medium toast heads.
Okay.
Now, because we're keeping everything a single barrel, and we're talking about 7, 8, 9-year old whiskey here, those barrels aren't being filled all 53 gallons. There may be two-thirds full, there may be half full, maybe it's 40 gallons, which means there's more interaction between that already well-aged whiskey and the freshly toasted wood sugars in that brand new barrel. So you have more interaction, you have things that are, I wouldn't say accelerated in the aging, but it's deeper. And what we like to say is, you're going to get the age on the nose, you're going to get that barrel on the palate, you're going to get a dynamite finish. But moreover, it's about filling in the gaps and emboldening and sort of creating a bigger, lusher profile on the palate. Which, I mean, I'm sure you can attest. You've been sipping it now for a couple
No,
years.
no, the new one I haven't touched. I say
Oh, right.
I
Yeah,
will not
I
touch.
just poured one.
Yeah, I will not touch till I talk to you. So,
I've touched
for,
mine.
for people who are watching, this is what the bottle looks like.
Yeah,
This is a black bottle, elegant bottle. It's very conservative on the bottle design itself.
yeah,
Love the Kentucky, the ode to the Kentucky
yeah.
Derby, toasted. I mean, it's very, very. I like to say simplicity is the first thing. This is your toasted bourbon,
105.
52.5, right?
So with
Percent
so
ABV.
we started out with barrel strength versions for the first couple years. This year, for the first time, we put out a toasted 105, which is proof down to 52.5%. So generally speaking, our barrel strengths are at 58, 59%.
Correct.
We're not proofing it down a massive amount. We're talking like 6, 7% here that we're proofing down. But what we found is, as we went down like half proof points looking for it, and this was just the sweet spot. So you still maintained that nose, that filled in palate, but it doesn't have quite as big a punch on the finish with that like barrel strength heat, right? So it's a bit
So
more accessible while still holding on to the depth.
So the first expressions that came out of Blackwood, though, let's say somebody found one from 2021, you have found a cast strength version of that.
Yes, absolutely. And so there were, God, I should know this exactly off the top of my head. There were 4 batches of the cast strength bourbon and 3 batches of the cast strength rye over those years. And so we had another version recently, and then the toasted 105 is going to be our main core line.
Kind of the flagship.
Yeah, the flagship, and then the barrel strengths will remain, but they'll be allocated. And then, of course, we
Okay,
have single barrels as well. And with the single barrels, you know how that is. It varies everywhere from.
correct.
We popped open a rye single barrel that was 210 bottles and 50% ABV.
So that's those
You
single
know,
barrels. Are they going to be like a group picks, or are they going to be
yeah,
store picks for single barrels?
both.
How is that going to go?
Both. So we do with different whiskey groups, of course. You can also get single barrels at Justin's House of Bourbon, which is sort of like our Kentucky pick, if you will. And then, different events and things like that. But the single barrels, I mean, we were just working on this morning, actually. We were just going through our single barrels and planning ahead for the next round. And to be a single barrel, it has to be, wow. And what's great is our whiskey comes in, our now 8-year rye. It was 7-year when it came in. Now it's 8-year, and our 8-year bourbon, which is pushing 9-year. A lot of that whiskey is already really good, right? And so when you're putting into these barrels, a char 2 is very different than a char 4, and a medium toast, no char, is extremely different than a charred barrel, right? And so when we make our batches, and with this toasted 105 you're nosing now, it's about an 18 barrel batch. When we're making our batches, the medium toast and the char 4 is going to be sort of the star of the show, and that char 2 is going to add that little extra layer of funkiness that you don't really get anywhere else, right? That is that extra depth, that little something you can't quite pinpoint. And that's what's beautiful about a char 2. It's just a completely unique one of one sort of experience. But because that
Do
distillate's already good coming out of those barrels, we're just pushing it from like a 10 to an 11, if that makes sense.
Correct. So do we know the source of it, or we just know it's Kentucky source?
So we can't say the source of the bourbon. It is Kentucky.
Okay.
It's a 75-21-4 mash bill, if that helps anyone on Reddit.
The nerds are gonna jump on it.
Yeah. Um, well, the rye is MGP 95.5.
Okay.
We can't
All
say
right.
that.
Okay.
And I have to say, cheers, man.
Mhm.
We were pulling some of the rye today from the barrel. Oh, that's nice. And we hit a honey barrel, just like, I think it was 106.9 proof. So very low proof. And it was just mind blowingly good. Tapped the barrel next to it. It was like, oh, yeah, good rye. But this one was just like another, another stratosphere of depth. And
You
so you never know with these barrels, right, man? Like,
correct, correct. I mean, I feel I heard the best thing when I was in Scotland one time. The guy say, "Each better is like a person."
yeah,
Each one have their personality, and I'm like, oh, that is true, right? Each
very,
barrel kind of have their own personality. So the blender kind of is what we like to call the school principle.
yeah,
You bring it together so everybody can get along, but
absolutely.
individually, each barrel kind of have their personality.
Yes.
Um,
And I mean, you've been around
people,
enough, man.
yeah,
It's all about the blender. It's about the people
correct,
actually putting this stuff together.
correct. I will tell you one thing. I feel like people have used and abused the term toasted, right, in the industry. And you and I
Sure.
have been along that
Yeah.
someone tell you they have something toasted, you're like, oh, okay, fine. Another bullshit toasted that you
Right.
guys are putting. This is phenomenal, my man.
Thank you.
This is fantastic.
Yeah.
Like, it is caramel, right? Like those overcooked bonbons, caramel
Mm,
with this cherry drizzle, maraschino cherry drizzle on it,
nice.
with some dust of cinnamon,
Mm,
finishing with some black cocoa and a dash of clove. That's it.
ooh,
Like
nice.
it's like
Dig it. Yeah.
that
Absolutely.
toasted part
Mm,
it's really much so the most interesting part of this bourbon. First, you can tell the quality of the barrels that you guys are bringing in before you toast it, right? The whiskey you're picking is already A1, right? So you kind of cheat because you already have high quality whiskey that you're bringing in, and
fair and
obviously,
true.
yeah, and then obviously we you have now this in a toasted barrel, and I don't
And
know if somebody's passing by or in a comment. I'm really curious to know if anybody have tried Blackwood before, because it's quite interesting that I feel like it's amazing whiskey, but no one hypes it up. And I don't know if it's because you guys are very much so a small distribution right
yeah,
now is why.
you're
But
small.
tell me, what did you hear when you go to festival and place? Because I am I am behooved and bamboozled by the amount of people that don't say I'm I need to pick this bottle up. I need to have one of these.
Yeah. I mean, we get a very good reaction from festivals, right? Especially, whiskey forward, whiskey loving people tend to gravitate towards us. They'll go around all the tables and they'll always come back and be like, ah, this is my favorite of the fest, or this is my favorite pour, and we're more than happy to pour more for them, of course. It's this sort of thing where I'm going to be completely frank with you. Um, we kind of don't care too much about the hype machine. Our marketing is very focused on high-end culinary, high-end cocktail bars, international luxury plays. Um, you
I mean,
know,
it tastes luxury, so I can't
yeah,
argue that.
you're right,
It is phenomenal. It represent what toasted Kentucky bourbon should taste like.
right. And it's the sort of thing where we, our market is on the luxury end. Like we're not pretending this isn't a luxury product. It's $85 a bottle for the toasted 105 bourbon, which isn't crazy price as
That's what I'm saying.
people
It's not very out of bounds.
no. And between you and I, we've both tasted plenty of bottles that are 159 that are just 8-year-old this, but not anything done to it,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
Um,
Because I
and
honestly can at 105, right? At 105, at this level of taste and gravitas, right? On my palate, I'm okay spending 79.99, 89.99 for it
yeah,
because I'm like, this is something I will truly enjoy. And
and you
that
can hear it and you can enjoy it,
yeah,
and
so that finish even on my tongue right now is telling me, hey, if those people that want those dessert cigars, right?
ooh, yeah, yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
now another thing, because of the caramel aspect of this, I want to make an affogato, right?
Hell
An ice
yeah.
cream affogato
Yes.
with
Yes.
the coffee blended with this toasted bourbon,
Oh
so I
yeah.
can pour it on that vanilla
You're speaking
and
my
really
language.
create that affogato the right way. So I don't know. When people think about whiskey, I feel like people always think really linear. But the truth here is
Exactly.
I taste the whiskey and I think of all the other ways. Right now, I want to have a big bowl as an African, a big bowl of peanut, uh, goat, goat peanut stew with
Ooh,
some fufu. With this one here,
yes.
that oiliness from that goat meat and this toast from this bourbon, I'm,
Perfect.
I'm I'm taking this bottle with me to Africa. It's gonna be a party next time because this
That's
the
amazing.
you guys have done the toasted right. That I have to give
Yeah.
credit when credit is due. This is when people say they have a toasted whiskey. This is what it should be. So I
Yeah.
would like to continue.
And, there's sort of two worlds out there when it comes to toasted, right? There's what we're doing where you're taking those toasted wood sugars, which are caramelized wood sugars at the end of the day that are freshly accessible, and you're layering those sugars that are caramelized with my artifact into your whiskey. And then the other side of the toasted world is oak, 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 oak. Let's eat a cord of wood, chew on some bark, let's make it go. And that's perfectly fine too if that is what you like to drink. Just as you know, my friend, like some people like to chew on bandages and drink salt water at Lafroig. Other people like to chew on asphalt at Ardbeg. Other people like to go to Balmore and have a nice caramelly sip. You know what I mean? Like there's this place for everything. So I'm not decrying the oaky toasted beers.
For the story, let me guys tell you something. I'll be forever grateful to Zach. A lot of people don't know this, but when I started, a lot of companies in Europe, it's just so hard to get those companies to
Mhm.
send me sample and let me review it. And I'll reach out to them and I'll talk and I'll send countless emails. And these people would just never respond. Or they'll be like, oh, we're not distributing the US yet. So I meet Zach at an event 3 years ago, and I talked to Zach. I say, Zach, I'm sick and tired. I love single malt whiskey. I love Scottish whiskeys, but it's just so tough for me to review some of these because some of them are over $500. I want to buy them, but some I can't afford.
Yeah,
And Zach
especially
goes,
for an ounce.
Zach goes, what are you looking for? And I'm like, every new release out of either Scotland or those high end release that are there. I know you wrote a couple articles. He goes, what's your address? And I go, what do you mean? He's like, what's your address? And I give him my address. He go, okay, I can't promise you now because I have shit in my house. But I promise you, once I get through that shit in my house, I have something for you. And it was like 3 weeks later, I get a package from Zach, and it's all the samples of the Middleton 2025 years, the Bullmore. Like that was my first time having a high-end Bullmore. When I tell you make good friends in the whiskey industry, I mean make good friend in the whiskey industry. And that was the first time I reviewed Bullmore on my channel. And that's the first time I reviewed like high-end Middleton. Obviously, I reviewed the high end Middleton. Middleton reached out to me, goes, "Oh, that was a good review." And I said, "You weren't responsible for that. You know, Zach Johnson was responsible for that, right?" So I'm forever I'm grateful. I tell this story all the time. I say, make good friend in the industry because they're the one who may open the door for you to try something that you've never tried in your life. And the Aston Martin Bowmore and the
Or
25-year Middleton. You are
yeah.
the reason why I've tried it. So yeah, Zach was my plug to help me actually try some of these things that I will never get the opportunity to try ever. So I tell
And
that story all the time. So I'm still grateful, my friend.
well, I'm glad I could always help and hope I can in the future. But that also plays into what we're doing here, man. I mean, I think for us, especially on the luxury end, I mean, we're a small operation. We can be one on one and personal, and it's all about the relationships. Like, it doesn't matter how many brand ambassadors you have on the road, it doesn't matter how much hype you have on Instagram or TikTok, all that shit is fleeting. At the end of the day, you got to be able to sit down with people in a whiskey club in Tampa or a cigar bar in DC or a whiskey club in Melbourne or wherever, and you got to build upon the relationships that you've been building your whole life, and that's how this business kind of moves forward, right? And especially now, I mean, not I don't want to get into all the doomsday reporting that's going on with the spirits
There
industry.
is so much change. Like, we're gonna put it
Yeah,
this way: there's so much change happening in the
it's
whiskey
yeah,
industry, and
change is good.
yeah, change is never a bad thing. But
Yeah,
there's so much change happening. Interpersonal relationship are very important.
and
Like,
that's where the future lies. Yeah,
yeah, the craziest thing I tell people is, I used to travel for food. Then I started traveling for whiskey.
right.
I speak French. I speak English. I remember I was in Paris 2022. I was no 20, yeah, 2022. I was in Paris. I go to La Maison du Whisky, and
Mhm.
I'm sitting there, and this guy is going on trying to educate us or something. And when I came in, I'm speaking English, and he thought I was American, right? So obviously he's going off, and he was trying to describe something in whiskey, which I had to look up, a flavor that I had to look up in French, because I tell all my small groups that speak French about whiskey, and when I said it in French, he stopped in his track and he looked at me and he goes, "Comment tu connais ça?" Like, how do you know this?
Right.
And I'm like, "Oh, I teach about I teach about whiskey." And this guy looked at me and he goes, "Really?" I'm like, "Yeah, I do it online and that." So he takes me back, right? When we were done with the tasting with everybody, he takes me back. I have my friend that lives in Paris who buys whiskey from them every time. Take us back to the old room, to the 1930s,
Nice.
40s, 60s, Gordon MacPhail, those old independent bottling. And
Oh, yeah.
he's like, "I want you to try this and this and this." And my friend looked at me, he goes, "I've been buying whiskey from here for 5 years. I didn't even know this place exists," right? So you go, so relationships matter. Just
Yeah,
walk to
they really
people
do.
and sit and talk to people about what we do matters. The internet is fine, but I tell people the internet is the internet, right? The
Yeah,
writers are the writers. But at the end of the day, can you stand in front of a group of 20 people and really tell them how they should feel about the whiskey in front of them? And can those people, I tell every brand, I'm in business, I'm a small business owner, tell every brand, at the end of the day, are we moving? Are we moving cases? If we're not moving cases, the whole internet and writing and look beautiful and take beautiful pictures doesn't mean shit. If
yeah.
if we can come down to. So I'm
There's
glad you guys are going international. I'm glad a lot of people get to try your whiskey, and you guys are actually going the historic way. For people that don't know, there is a reason why during the pandemic you guys were buying Blanton straight from the barrel from France or from Japan, or you could buy Four Roses from these places. Historically, those were the people consuming our whiskey
yes.
when we were actually, were able to actually afford our whiskey. So if you're a brand right now that are not thinking outside of your bubble, I don't know what you're thinking, but what I can tell you is that talking about their expansion and thinking really to expand their market because they know where they stand as luxury,
Absolutely.
that is the way to go. You got to think outside of the box. So I understand why you don't hype it in the US, right? You have your relationship and
Yeah,
enter with all the group and all your buyers and whatnot. But I understand what you're doing because right now you're hitting a target that wants to discover American whiskey, that want to know more about Kentucky bourbon, and you are going after those people. And believe it or not, they have the funds to afford that whiskey.
absolutely, and more so than ever before. And I mean, and that's one reason that we partnered with World's 50 Best, their North America restaurants division, is that we then have access to the best chefs in North America, Mexico,
Correct.
Canada.
Right.
the U.S., the Caribbean. Then also, that extends worldwide as well. And that's our key demo at the end of the day, because I mean, I come from the pre-Bourdain era. Like you can tell I'm that old for my gray hair. But you know, chefs in spirits are often the true gatekeepers because they're the ones who are going to come out at the end of your meal and say, "Hey, can I pour you something nice?" and pour you a Blackwood, right?
And just to add to what you're saying, when I started doing African food and whiskey pairing,
Yep,
no one at that time
right.
beside Heaven Hill believed that bourbon
Which
and
is crazy.
African food could be a thing when I
Yeah,
was doing Afrofusion dinners.
wild.
And the craziest thing was when I did it the first time, the chef that was cooking after tasting the cocktail is after having the bourbon was more excited to come up with a brand
Yeah,
new menu and create something new just based on the fact that they've tried the whiskey and went, wow, I want to make something that can pair with that whiskey.
absolutely. And that's what's so much fun about whiskey is like, yes, you can sit there, drink it neat on your porch or your backyard or with your friends or in your favorite whiskey bar with a cigar. That's fantastic. Do that all day. If you want to put this into a cocktail that's whatever forward, citrus forward, old fashioned, Manhattan, great. If you want to pair this with food from anywhere in the world, I find our whiskey pairs especially well with very sort of umami, spice forward, bold flavors. So, like West African food, South Asian food, Japanese, Korean. It just goes
Okay,
fantastically with those cuisines.
didn't you hear what I said? I told you
Yeah,
this
yeah,
is goat meat stew.
yeah,
This
exactly.
this bourbon I just had for me is a goat meat stew with some fufu next to me,
Hell yeah.
and we opening up with this bourbon right here. Um, I can think of rice and peas, rice and peas with some jerk chicken with a little spice, and make a chocolate old fashioned
Ooh,
with a
okay.
little bit of that
I like that.
anise and clove bitters in it.
Mm.
Like I can
Oh,
think of all this. So I know I
man.
see and look at where you're going with this. And I will 50 word best is the best way to go because I can think of so many chefs, and there's James Beer Warren winning chef in that group that would literally. But before I get too excited, right? Let's talk about operation. Beside you guys getting your whiskey, put in a toasted barrel, and getting out the whiskey. What's the operation looks like? Somebody because they're I think I don't know, but I think when I go on your website, you keep it vague for a reason. And I don't know why. It's very vague, right? It's there's nothing particular because I don't think your or your distillery or operation are open to the
No,
public.
no,
They're not. They're not. So is the plan to create a distillery operation where you're actually creating your whiskey and obviously going in. And some people may ask the question, why another distillery in Kentucky? There's
which
so
kind of
many things that happen.
yeah,
Why do we need another distillery in Kentucky? Can't you just continue sourcing your whiskey and just
yes.
making great barrel whiskey like we have and not worry about it?
So all of the above, right? Like I think a lot of businesses fail because they box themselves into a corner. We're in a very lucky time because the industry, there's a glut. There's too much basically distillate in barrels that's going to turn into bourbon and rye in this country and in Scotland and in Ireland. Period. There is. So we're going to keep sourcing whiskey because the prices keep going down. We'd be insane not to. Like that would doesn't make any sense not to do this for as long as there are, that we can, as long as we can buy barrels at this price and it's only going to get lower over the next 3 to 5 years, we're going to keep doing that 1,000,000%. We're going to keep making Blackwood toasted finish and we're going to keep doing this on this road. At the same time, we are building a distillery, but here's the key. we're building a tourism consumer facing distillery. So a lot of the issue with the distillery scene here, which you know you've been to enough of them, they've had to completely almost tear down and rebuild their distilleries to make it consumer facing. Because
Correct.
most of these places were built as industrial campuses that had no intention of ever letting a layperson on them ever. And so they've had to spend basically as much, if not more money rebuilding. So that's, what happened at Jim Beam and Claremont, what happened, what's going on at Willett right now, the fact that Heaven Hill built a brand new full facility in Bardstown. Obviously, the shining example of focus or purpose building would be Bardstown Bourbon Company that built for a consumer facing experience. But look at, uh, Buffalo Trace. I mean, it's a National Historic Register campus. They finally put a coffee bar on the back deck, and they're finally opening up a lunch sandwich spot, which again is sort of like passive.
I feel like it took forever for them to do that.
And yeah, it's 2025, almost 2026. But that's because of their it boxed in that corner of that National Historic landmark, right? You do what you can do with what you got. But that's not what people want. Like, yeah, they'll walk around your distillery for 90 minutes, but they also want a cocktail. They want a good meal. They want an experience. And so what Blackwood Distilling is doing and what we're building, so we have 600 acres in Madison County, which is about 20 minutes south of Lexington on the 75, about 10 minutes north of Richmond, where Eastern Kentucky University is. We have 600 acres there that we are purpose building towards a consumer driven tourist experience at a distillery. So we will have a interactive consumer driven barrel house where people will come into. It's sort of going to be built like a open tobacco lodge. So there'll be lots of natural light. People can come in and have a proper barrel house experience, a blending experience, a bottling experience there. We will also have on site farm to table restaurant that we're hoping to get Michelin to take attention in Kentucky for the first time ever with.
Okay.
We're working with a chef that we can't announce yet, but it is going to be very, very, very much a you know destination restaurant.
Restaurant.
Luckily, again, we have those 600 acres to pull from of both forest and farm and pasture. We're going to put in gardens, we're going to put in greenhouses. And then also we're going to have a forest to glass cocktail bar that we're working with basically Ian Griffins from Middle House, who just opened up Bar Snack in New York, but he co-founded the Lion Group, so Super Lion, Silver Lion, Dandelion, all those bars. He's going to do our bar. And then below that, we're going to probably have a VIP whiskey vault. We're hoping to have the largest collection of vintage whiskey at any bar in the country.
You got the people for that.
Yeah, and so all of this coming together as a destination experience in the state of Kentucky that, yes, is spirits driven. Like, yes, we were going to have a still and a running still house, et cetera, et cetera. But let's be realistic here. Like, this is opening the end of 2027, let's say, with weather and implements, let's say realistically spring 2028, right? Well, that's great. Now you have to season your still and your fermenters, and that takes 12 more months. So now we're into spring 2029 before we're using anything off that still for consumers. Obviously, you use ethanol for industrial purposes while you're seasoning. But my point being, okay, now we're in 2029. Okay, then that whiskey needs to go in the barrel. And for our purposes, we're looking at 6 to 8 years in the barrel minimum. So now we're at 2035. And so the world's going to be a completely different place in 2035. So, when we're talking with people now who are, part of our program and, want to be, work with us, you have to talk with people about the mid 2030s when we're talking about our whiskey. And that's a long way to go between now and then,
And
right?
then
We're talking 10 years from now, all things go well, knock on wood, etc. We will start to maybe have our first set of own distillates. So between then, we're going to be doing a shitload of sourcing because there is amazing whiskey that's going to start. Let's face it, like a ton of whiskey that went in those barrels went in 2021, 2022, and 2023. The slowdown started in 2024. So 2031, we're going to have 10-year-old barrels that are amazing in this state. And also, you're going to have the swing back because you're going to have all this aged whiskey that's going to start getting exported because there isn't enough market here. It's going to be the exact same as the 80s and 90s.
Right.
And then people are going to bring in the bottles back and charging you $500 for them because it's a 12-year-old Heaven Ale that no one's ever heard of. And, it's just sort of rinse, wash, repeat, right? Well, in the meantime, we're going to be pulling in those barrels too. And we're going to be, working with them because, an 8-year-old barrel that we're putting in a 2026 batch, that was, that was 2018. An
Correct.
8-year-old barrel that we're putting in a 2028 batch, that was 2020 already. So, if you're intelligent about how you're going to run your distillery, it's not a whiskey distillery, it's a distillery. You make
Correct.
spirits.
Correct.
You make beer in the fermentation tanks, and you can make spirits off the still. Yes, you can make whiskey, but you know what else you can make? Gin, vodka, rum, brandy. I mean, obviously you would need a pot still for brandy, but
Correct.
A smart distiller right now would be not putting distillate into a barrel, they'd be putting it into a bottle,
Correct.
getting that bottle on the shelf and on the bar, because that's how you keep the lights on at the end of the day. And as you well know,
That's what everybody does to keep the lights on.
yeah, and that's always been true, not just now. And there's enough whiskey in barrels for plenty of us to go around, and you're going to start seeing it I guarantee you, in the next 2 years, all the brands that sort of have gone under and will go under, you're going to see new brands starting to pick up because people are going to start selling those 4-year-old barrels from 2021, 2026, 2027. They're going to be dirt cheap, and people are going to be able to afford them, bottle them, and put them on the shelf for $49.95, or put them into a secondary barrel and have a finish for $49.95. Like, that's going to kick up again in 2027, 2028, just because of the way our ecosystem works, right? And maybe it'll take longer than that. Maybe, I'm being a little too, sunshine in the skies and, optimistic. But, even if it doesn't, we're going to go, if we go back to when, J.W. Dent had 12-year-old Heaven Hill in the bottle or whatever it was in the mid-90s, like, that's okay too, because it just means we're going to be drinking good whiskey in the future.
Correct.
So, there's growing pains now, and there's correction pains, if you will, and you have to be realistic about those. I mean, I'm not pretending that there isn't. That is, beer is, and wine are in even worse spots than spirits. But it's the sort of thing where you have to learn to capitalize on the situation you're in. And for us, we're a luxury brand, so we go to luxury markets.
Correct.
We're going to keep sourcing. We're going to build a distillery, but again, 2035, it's going to be a different world, man.
I know it's gonna be. I mean, I know it's gonna be kind of a different world, but I'm sitting there and I'm like, where do we go? What does your brand, or what does
For a while you go refined, right? You go niche, because look, man, like, we spent the last 10 years, it's not just the good COVID thing from 2020. This was already happening from 2015, 2014, going into 2020. The boom started in earnest around 2010.
correct?
And at what you saw over that decade pre-COVID was people putting bullshit in bottles and charging you twice as much as they should have for it. And so you'd walk into a liquor store in the Bay Area or in Sacramento or in Seattle or in Chicago, and there'd be a wall of bourbon with hundreds of different labels from maybe 5 distilleries, right? But all those different labels, all those different brandings, all that different marketing, all those different, whiskeys were all the same bullshit. And people got wise to that, and they stopped. People get wise to, like, oh, I'm putting a 4-year-old MGP in a bottle and charging you $79.95. Well, that's not anything you need to do. And people know what's good and they know what's not, and they will correct in that way. And so that's why you're seeing a lot of these things sort of fade out, and you're seeing success on the luxury end, because it is not just throwing a 4-year-old MGP in a bottle and charging you $79.95 for it. Actually making something specific, something unique, something that's actually unassailably good. And maybe not charging you that extra 50% that they were in the, 2018, 2020, 2022. Because consumers are savvy, man. Like, they don't need to know all the scientific details of
Yeah,
whiskey to be
yeah,
safe
yeah.
whiskey.
They're catching on. Consumers are catching on to what is happening in the market.
Yeah.
A lot of consumers are just literally sitting around and making sure that they understand what exactly is what they're purchasing. So
Yep.
more people are definitely uh, doing their homework. Consumers
Absolutely.
are not just buying things because they're buying things. They want more.
They want more,
They
yeah.
want more. They want
And,
more.
people slag off the awards circuit, San Francisco and IWSC, and all that, but it's like people care about that. Like, people look at that for guidance,
Correct.
and it drives actual sales. Like, all the, gold, double gold, who gets what aside, just like people when they go to their favorite restaurant, they're gonna ask, the waiter for, "What's your favorite bourbon?"
What's good here?
Yeah, "What's good here?"
Yeah.
Right? It's the same thing, it's the same concept, and so, you know, I hate, saying, the things that are gatekeeping, but gatekeeping is real. You
Gatekeeping
gotta
it is a thing. It is a thing in this whiskey world.
and the key to selling a product is you gotta be best buds with the gatekeepers.
Correct. Correct.
Like,
So
you know
let's talk about your rye. Rye is about the
sure.
same proof as the bourbon. 52.5
Yep.
is the rye. Green, obviously. You say your rye is an MGP, right?
Yes.
MGP rye. Um, and is a toasted MGP. What's the average age on your rye that you're
So with this batch, we're looking at about 7.5-ish years, 7 years plus, and it's about a 12-barrel blend. And again, with the medium toast and the tar for kind of the star of the show in the blend, and then proof down. So it was around 58.5, 59% when it was batched, and then we proofed it down to 52.5.
okay?
And I like to say this is a bourbon lover's rye because we've been drinking.
I feel like when the rye is toasted, it becomes a bourbon lover's rye because I feel like that toast uh, aging process take away the harshness or some of these overspice note of a rye, right?
Yeah.
So for me, this rye is very, very, very fragrant.
Yes.
It's very fragrant. It's like just walking past um a fresh garden of lilac, right? It's very fragrant.
It's good.
It's there's just embrace of herbaceousness that just embrace you. It's like fresh cut roses, right? If fresh cut a rose and just smell that stem.
Absolutely.
Cheers.
Cheers. I'm a rye guy, man, and I love that rye. I mean, it's just
Mm,
tasty.
wait a minute. What's going on here?
You tell me.
Clove, mint.
Oh yeah.
There's this undertone of cacao.
Mhm.
Like it's a mix. If I had to put it in colors, it's a mix of dark with just on and kind of a splash of bright on top of it. You almost get you confused because you expect the spiciness, the herbaceousness, but no, it is savory.
Yeah.
It is savory. Remind me of a burnt pork butt.
Oh, nice. All right, I can dig that.
It's like an over season. Like you see how you
Mm.
season that pork butt and it burns, and you're like, oh, some people love it, some people hate that part, but it's like you guys literally have transformed this, right? Because I don't
Yeah.
even think it has its original DNA.
It's surprising, right? Because 95.5 is very well known,
Correct.
That
That is my only
rye,
go-to
black
rye. Like, I
pepper,
love 95.5, but I
and
would have guessed the 95.5 by
yeah, this
having this one.
yeah, this sort of takes like it's still like the dryness is gone, but the pepperiness it almost moves more towards a white pepper for me. But then the spiciness really comes through, like you said, clove. I get a little bit of kind of I like to call it nostalgia, but like holiday spice cake sort of thing, like the dark sticky ones. Like, yeah, like almost burnt caramel, maybe like dark chocolate in there for sure. But then yeah, it's this sort of for me, and it's also a really nice mouthfeel. Like the viscosity is nice. Like it's creamy, it's lush, it's got a really nice finish. But you still, for me, it is a rye. You get that rye mintiness, a little bit of that herbaceousness in there, maybe more oily than dry. And so it is not a bourbon, but it is a
No, it
unique.
is a rye on the nose
Yeah,
all the way.
yeah.
On the palate, that beginning is a rye, but that finish is very, very. It's like that finish is a long conversation.
And I know this is really out there, but once in a while, when the wood does come through, I almost get like a bit of a like white wine oak a little bit in the very back end.
That
Yeah.
dryness reminds me of that.
Yeah. And so it's not like black pepper dry, like you're chewing on a peppercorn or a lime leaf or something like that, like you get with some of these 95.5s. It's much more delicate at especially when the toast of the oak, quote unquote, comes in. It's a very delicate oak.
I'm I'm actually very much so surprised. Like I'm pleasantly surprised by this. It's that mintiness kind of lingers around, kind
Yeah.
of
Reminding you it's a rye.
correct, reminding you so is a rye. So I know you were into luxury. I know you were, definitely getting into restaurant, getting you here. But let's talk about distribution. This product, where do people find this product? Right. That's the
So very broad brushstrokes first, and then I'll get a little more specific. Kentucky, Texas, Florida, Wyoming, DC are our core. We're expanding into Tennessee, Nevada, and California as well this year. We'll be expanding in Germany, France, Denmark, and Australia as well this year. Um, for American listeners in those states, so Florida, Texas, Kentucky, DC, Wyoming, generally will be in a Total Wine or Liquor Barn, a higher end retail. Will be off premise in some restaurants and bars. But again, we're not everywhere. We're not a scatter shop brand. We're a very specific brand. Now the thing is, if you want to order it online, you can go to our website, and via bourbonoutfitter.com, we can ship to I think 44 states now in the U.S. And so that's one aspect. If you're like, for instance, if you're in Louisville, you can go to Watch Hill proper, or you can go across the street to Seven Spirits. Like we're in both of those places. We're also in our barrel strengths are in the Liquor Barn and Total Wines here. We're working on getting into some higher end retail in our states as well. But I can't overemphasize enough that we're not trying to be in all 50 states. We're not trying to be in every EU country. We're really just focusing on key markets. Obviously, Florida and Texas are huge markets. That's kind of you got to anyway. But even down there, we're in high end whiskey retail. So one of our, shout out to Winthrop Liquor, which is just outside of West Tampa. It's owned by a whiskey lover who literally lives above his retail shop, his whiskey shop, and they have this beautiful patio, and people come and smoke cigars and drink whiskey and make cocktails, and that's our sort of place. That's our ideal place. Same thing with Seven Spirits here in Louisville and Norton Commons. It's about the bar that's also in the spirit shop, right? And so people are sitting around and can enjoy and taste and experience it in a more communal way. um, and that's what we more focus on, which I know probably sounds crazy to some people in marketing or like pulling their hair out right now because we have such a small marketing plan and such a niche marketing plan, but it's what works for us because we're not trying to we're not moving 100,000 cases of whiskey. Like that's not what we're here to do with this brand right now. This brand is about, moving very tasty whiskey to the right people so that it gets in the right hands and so people can enjoy it who love whiskey, who love food, who love cocktails, who love spirits, who love wine, who love beer. Like this is an experiential whiskey, which I know sounds like a marketing bullshit term,
Yeah.
but it really is, right? Like it is sort of, our slogan is the pursuit is the dream. And it's sort of like we kind of live by that in the sense that we're living the dream because we get to share this amazing whiskey with people over amazing dinners and in amazing cocktail bars. And one of my favorite things to do is to go to bars and hang out with bar owners and bartenders and share a couple glasses and talk about cocktails and mix it up with something cool and find things that you never thought before.
But
Um,
you've always that's kind of your DNA. You've
that
always been
is, yeah, but now I can bring an awesome whiskey to it, man.
right, correct. Because
Right?
you've been in the industry, you've sat, tales of cocktails, you've been there, you've interacted, wrote and talked to these people, right? So I mean, for me, when it comes to, I knew right, this whiskey was good, but somewhere I knew you wouldn't ever endorse a brand that you personally didn't believe that was actually
Yeah,
very
yeah, absolutely. And look, man, like I like a lot of different things. Like I love Michter's 10. Like I drink that all day. I'm a huge fan of E.H. Taylor single barrel. Drink that all day. I'm a big vodka guy too. Like I can go for hours about the veracity of different Russian, Polish, Lithuanian vodkas, and bore you to death about that, and talk about red wheat and rye and blah
correct,
blah blah.
correct,
Like I love this stuff. I love Sonoma wine, Sonoma Pinots, and Napa Chardonnays and Nero d'Avolos from Sicily and et cetera, et cetera. Like I've spent tons of time in Italy, just getting deep into wine, and I'm a huge Bollinger guy. Like that's sort of my go-to drink. Um, I also worked in beer for a while in beer media, and I have a lot of extremely close friends who are both brewers and beer writers, and you know I was just in Bamberg last month for a cheeky weekend in Bamberg where a bunch of my old beer friends and families, we just met and, had 3 days drinking beer around Bamberg, and it's this, and you're absolutely right in that this is what I built my life around, right? And
correct.
so when Guinness, came calling, it just felt like it was the right thing because, you know, Freddie No doesn't need me, you know, Jimmy Russell doesn't need me. You know what I mean? Like, they're doing great.
Correct.
I love them to death, Joe Magliocco doesn't need me. They're doing great, and I love them to death, and, it's I consider Michter's like a mentor, especially, what Dan McKee's doing, what Andrea Wilson's doing, what Joe has done, what Matt has done. Amazing. Michter's is amazing, um, both as a company, but also as a product.
Correct.
Um, and the beauty of what we're doing is we can be everybody's friend. We're
Correct.
not competing with, I'm
Correct.
not competing with Evan Williams at all.
No.
I am not competing with Wild Turkey at all. And that's great because I love what Bruce Russell is doing over there. And I want to celebrate that too. And that's the sort of beauty of this industry in that, there's so much good whiskey here. Great. But what's important is there are good people here and there are people
Correct.
who care about each other. And yes, there may be some hard times ahead for some people, but just like it was in the 50s and again in the 80s and 90s, the people
It's
here come
cyclical.
together.
Yeah, it will
Here
come,
together
it
to
will
support each
go. Yeah.
other. You know what I mean? Like you've heard all the stories of, how Booker No and Jimmy Russell, helped Julian Van Winkle keep Stitzer Weller
Correct.
functioning, literally lending him tools to fix fermenters and
Correct.
stills, right, in the 50s and 60s, like that's the community that's here. And yes, there's a lot of corporatization, and yes, there's a lot of, bigger, ecosystems with a lot of these places now, but it's still the core. The core of it is still here. And I went to a dinner uh, maybe a year ago now, maybe 2 years ago. Shit, I don't know. But anyway, it was for Wild Turkey Generation. So it was the first bottle that Jimmy, Eddie, and Bruce Russell
Correct.
did
Yeah.
together. And um, Jimmy's, or so Jimmy's would have invited Booker, but obviously Booker's passed. But also Eddie and Eddie Russell and Fred No Senior um, grew up together, and so Eddie Russell and Fred No were sitting together, sort of reminiscing about this, about what their sons have accomplished, and like, these are the
The
two
funniest thing is one day I made a post
and
saying,
wild turkey,
yeah,
like,
when you're sitting there and talking crap
yeah,
about these brands of bourbon sometime, do you know that some of these owners actually are friends?
best friends grew up together
Grew
back
up
back
together, share
turkey,
moments
yeah,
together. You know,
shared
I
families together.
quickly learned that coming to Kentucky
Yeah,
because you go to an event, like when we the weekend of bourbon, um, and you just sit there and you're like, why is this person and this person just chopping it up? And you're like, oh, oh my God, these people are friends.
yeah,
We're here hyping this product and thinking this product is better than this one. But in reality, on the shelf they compete. At home, they're friends.
yeah, exactly.
It's friendly competition because you all in the business. People have helped. If you understand the history of whiskey, people have helped others rebuild and come back and be great. Competition is a healthy competition to
Yeah,
happen.
and it's a beautiful thing, man, and that's why, all the, doom and gloom at the moment, and especially in the media aside, what makes sure that Kentucky survives and the bourbon industry survives is exactly that. It's the
Correct.
fact that these people went to high school together, they
Correct.
share backyards, their kids know each other and have for generations, and that's not gonna change. It doesn't matter if Pernod or Campari or LVMH or Diageo owns the parent company that owns the company that, oversees their operations. That doesn't change the truth on the ground that,
Correct.
these people know and love each other in a way that, it's hard for probably, the
Correct.
suits to understand. But, I'll leave you on that, man, because it's the sort of thing where when you're here, you see that firsthand and you see, Eddie Russell and Fred No, arm in arm shedding a tear over the next generation at an event like that. And it's sincere and it's real. And that's why I love this industry, because I've seen it in the bourbon industry. I've seen it, in wine, I've seen it in beer, and I've seen it in food. And it's something about hospitality that people forget, that it's hospitable.
All right. So here is my last question for you, and it's a two-part question. Number one, how, as an audience, can we help you make Blackwood better? That's one. And the second one is, if I already know Blackwood, what should I expect in the next year or two or three out of Blackwood as a brand?
So if you best help is to go to bourbonoutfitter.com and buy a bottle and enjoy it. Send one as a gift to somebody, because I guarantee you, if you got a whiskey lover in your life, they will like this whiskey. And I'll say that with confidence and
This
not
is
arrogance.
Blackwood Distilling. This is
Yeah.
Blackwood Distilling Co.com.
Yeah,
That's
if
that's
you go
Blackwood
there, yeah,
Distilling Co.com. You just go in there, you shop, you click shop, and it will take you to the store.
yeah, exactly. That's the best thing, and spread the love, man. It's it's sort of, we're both very hyper aware of how the hype machine works and the media machine, and it's, you can game it, you can do whatever you want, like, etc. But at the end of the day, real people enjoying the whiskey is what's important to us. And I love a lot of people in whiskey media, don't get me wrong, but what I adore is when someone who has no motive whatsoever posts on Reddit or posts on Instagram or wherever they choose, about how much they love our whiskey, and it's genuine and they mean it, and it means so much
I
to
tell
us.
people all the time, there's a lot of whiskey I've tried. Obviously, I cheat because I can call someone and go, hey, you have this bottle? Yes, okay, send me a 2 ounce sample
Yeah,
before even I get it because I usually can just curious. And
yeah,
I did the 5 bourbons I've liked
yeah.
this year, and I included Blackwood because I'm like,
Thank you.
that's a bourbon that no one talks about, and
Yeah,
I haven't seen any of those quote unquote influencers talk about. So I challenge every influencer out there. Grab yourself a bottle of Blackwood. No, no one is going to send you a PR package. Grab yourself a bottle of Blackwood, and I challenge you to put it against your best daily drinker or your mid-shelf bottle. And
Yeah.
I promise you, you're going to be in for, for a rude awakening of what's happening there. Obviously, the name behind these brands are solid enough to know that those are people I trust in the whiskey industry to know what the heck they're talking about when it comes to Kentucky bourbon. So,
I appreciate that
yeah,
very much. And then coming up, you know, we got, we're have a few events in September and October: Las Vegas, Berlin, Australia, Melbourne, Sydney, and Brisbane. Um,
I mean, I'm,
basically,
I'm open to pour whiskey if you need a hand.
basically, we're
My
going to
passport is also open, so if you need a hand to
we're
pour whiskey, I'm here.
we're we're, we're about to announce our first big collab, which will be something wholly unique. That I can say this with confidence as as a teaser. It'll be a whiskey that's never ever been made or released before, ever.
Wow. I,
So
I
it'll
can
be a
I can't wait to talk about
yeah,
that one.
so it'll be a true one of one in the whiskey world, as far as we can tell. But you know how it always is. You release it and people are like, "Oh, well, there's this thing from 1932," and you're like, "Okay." Um, like
Thank,
we've researched
thank,
very hard,
thank
and
you, Reddit.
yeah, we've researched as far as we can, and as far as we can tell, it's a one of one. It's the first time anyone's going to be doing this. And then in the spring, we have another very big collaboration coming out, that will be more attuned to the U.S. market, and it will be a collaboration that again will be a one of one that no one else can really do or will have. So we're keeping in that, like I said, one to one unique. We're trying to stay like we have our toasted product. We're sticking with the toasted product. We're going to be putting out a age stated non-toasted product as well, single barrel non-toasted product that we have some bourbon barrels that are just phenomenal, and we don't want to fuck them up. So we're going to be putting out a age stated product as well this year, um, hopefully in the mid fall. We might, like I said, we just found a honey barrel of rye. We might just put that out too because it's so goddamn good. But yeah, it's the sort of thing where we want to stick to maintaining the quality first and above all else. Like we are looking at collaborations when we're looking at the international market more
Correct.
so than anything else. We don't want to do any special barrel finishes with unique barrels because, in my opinion, Dan Calloway already does them perfectly
Very
at
well.
Barstow
Yeah.
Brewing Company.
Firestone Bourbon Company. Yeah.
There's no point in trying to even meet that because it's been done so well that it's just chasing something that you're never going to catch.
Correct.
It's like he's Spielberg and like somebody's trying to remake,
Remake the Titanic. What
yeah,
Titanic?
yeah. And so it's like, let them have that world, and we're exploring things in other parts of whiskey that will hopefully get some attention, but also put some good whiskey in people's hands. I mean, at the end of the day, you can say I can say whatever I want, but at the end of the day, I want to put a good glass of whiskey in somebody's hand that's unique. And from me, like you said, like, we're coming from experience. I've been doing this for 25 years.
Way
I've been
too long. Which the people, the name behind these brands are know what they're doing.
yeah.
Amazing palettes that I personally respect.
Well, I
Um,
respect yours too. You have an amazing palate. And also, please, the last thing I'm going to say is do more Afrofusion pairing nights because that is,
maybe Blackwood should sponsor one.
yeah,
We'll
maybe
love
yeah,
to have you in the gambit.
let's carry on this conversation because that shit is important, man. Like,
It
I'm not
it is important, right? I
food
have
and
we
whiskey.
have more
Whiskey.
what do you call it? We have more African chefs now that have been recognized as a James Beard Award. You
Absolutely.
have Serenge in New Orleans that
Yep.
now hold a lifetime achievement. He was a winner 2 years ago, but what he's making in the African food as creativity in New Orleans with Dakar Noir, he's doing something amazing that I've never seen. You
Yeah.
have
And
Chef
it's phenomenal.
Iche. in New York with Matilda,
Yeah.
bringing African food
Oh,
and
I
different,
haven't been yet, but I've heard amazing things. So
correct, and crazy things. So there is opportunities for these brands to actually, for brands to highlight what they're doing. When uh, 5 years ago, if I thought African people will call me to ask me bourbon recommendation,
yeah,
knowing that Africa was mostly colonized by Europe, which means they're influenced by champagne, wine, and single malt.
Guinness and
I would
singing,
have
Shasta
never
County.
I would have never thought that in my life.
Mhm.
But the amount of people that now reach out to me as African people going, "Hey, I'm having a gather. Which bourbon should I?" I'm like,
Yeah,
bourbon, so it's a market that I've not even been explored yet. And I remember I took some Bernheim. I did a tasting. I was just there in July. I took some Bernheim, and I'm telling you, the Bernheim, one of the guys was willing to give me money to take the rest of the bottle because
right.
he never had. Normally, he never had the only bourbon or the only American whiskey he know was Jack Daniel, so
Right.
he never had anything else but that. But to have a whiskey at cask strength over 50 proof, he thought
Difference.
it was the best thing ever he ever had. And he was willing to literally count $100 out of his pocket to hand to me so he can take this bottle. So just it is one of those things where you don't understand the hype of it till
Right.
people try it and go, wow. So
Yeah.
yes,
No,
my
and
goal
that's
is
just
to
it,
always
man.
to keep pushing the culture
Yeah.
of bourbon into other cultures, or
Yes.
into other communities, so they understand the importance
There's
of it.
a whole world of whiskey drinkers out there and bourbon lovers, and that is one thing that, social media has helped immensely with, is people all over the world are getting pre-educated about our industry. So when we do show up, there's that it's that little bit easier. And so you have to be very thankful to people like you and various other people on online media in the whiskey sphere for doing that, because they are helping immensely in that respect, especially because you can go to South Korea and people know what the fuck you're talking about.
Correct. I,
Or
I
you
I went to last year. I'm going back this year. Last October, I was at the London Whiskey Show with Whiskey Exchange. The amount of people that stood in front of American whiskey and knew so much about it. I'm like, these
yeah,
people know more than I do. This is weird. And we're talking about people
definitely
from
shifted.
Turkey, Germany, other places, and I'm like, okay,
Yeah,
it
and
was the
it's
craziest.
yeah, it has shifted, and that's what's great. I mean, the one caveat being you gotta come correct. You gotta bring good whiskey to get their attention, because you're like, this is the thing, like, part of my marketing strategy, then I'll let you go. But, like, I'm aiming to be on the bar next to a Talisker 25. That's what I'm aiming for. And so if I wanna be on the bar next to a Talisker 25 at the Hotel Eden in Rome, at the bar on the rooftop, I gotta come correct with a whiskey that deserves to be next to that Talisker 25.
That is true.
And that's what we're doing. So, like, when we get into these territories, it's not because we're muscling in with, price points or volume. We're getting in because you pour the right people the whiskey, they get excited and
Correct.
they want it. And that's the way to do it,
Correct.
because you put the good whiskey in people's hands, man, they get excited. And that's what I love, man.
You heard it here. Put good whiskey in people's hand,
That's it.
regardless of where they're from, which language they speak, what they do,
Yeah.
where they are in the world. There will be a smile. I've
Yeah.
been in rooms where we couldn't even exchange a word because they spoke a language I couldn't. But when
Yeah.
that whiskey hit the glass, we both spoke the same language immediately. And that's the language of savoring good whiskey, creating a bond, and really creating a connection. Zach,
Yes.
I want to thank you for actually coming to the show. I want to thank you for bringing Blackwood to
Well, thank
us.
you. Yeah.
For all of you guys that are here, if you have not, this was a long time coming. I'm glad we finally did this.
Yeah.
But do me a favor and just visit, right? BlackwoodDistillingCo.com. Learn a little bit about a brand. I challenge you to grab yourself, whether you're a right person or bird person, grab yourself one my so far my favorite for the summer, for this summer before the summer end, is the bourbon. But when that winter hit, and especially if you're a cigar smoker, You need one of these to actually keep you warm during the winter, but give you all that savoriness.
Yeah.
Make sure you check out either Instagram or the website to learn a little more about what they're doing, where they're doing. Keep an eye on them. I feel like these are these companies that are gonna pull things out that you wish you owned before 20 years from now. You're like, shit, I wish I bought this bottle. Zach, thank you so much for being here. I
Thank you,
appreciate you
Jack.
being here. I can't Friend, I can't wait to see you. I'm
Yeah.
coming to the Bourbon Fest. I don't know if I'm going to see you there,
Oh,
but
okay.
i-
Hit
if
me up.
if I see you there, prepare yourself for a bigger hug. I miss you,
Okay.
and check in your back in the back of your closet. See if there is any more Bowmore there, so I can actually steal some from you
I,
because you make
I'll
my
dig
life
around.
better when it comes to single malt.
I'll dig around and see what I can see if I can sniff
I
anything out.
appreciate
Maybe
you
bug,
coming on the
but
show. I appreciate you being here. And remember, this is your house now. So if there's
thank you so
anything
much.
or any new things coming on the market, feel free to come on. We'll love to talk about it and tell the folks about it. Till next time, this was a Truth is Barrel Proof. And